Welcome, everyone, to the Screwball Podcast. I'll be your host this afternoon. My name's Nathan Ryder. I'm joined today by Mr. Michael Cake.
Hello, welcome. This is once again another podcast within the Prairie Puck Boys here. So we now have a basketball one, a hockey one, this is our baseball one now.
And today we're talking about the Major League Baseball offseason and all the moves that have happened recently. We'll start with a nice little game that everyone's familiar with, a nice game of Tinder. But this time with free agent signings. We'll tell you if we think they're hot or not and provide a little bit of reasoning for each. So we'll start with our first free agent signing we have on our list here. Yasmani Grandal from the Milwaukee Brewers signed with the Chicago White Sox, 4 years, $73 million contract.
So I'm going to say this is a good deal for the White Sox here. I think Grandal had a very good season last year, very underrated catcher for the Brewers last year, especially with his 28 home runs, brings power to their position that they've needed for a long time. Jared McCann had a very good season for them last year. James McCann, yeah. One of them. There's too many McCanns out there. But yeah, had a very good season for them last year, being the All-Star and everything. But I think Grandal's definitely a good upgrade for them for sure.
My thoughts on the Grandal, I'm going to say this is a hot signing for the Chicago White Sox. Signed a one-year prove-it deal last offseason with the Milwaukee Brewers because he got the qualifying offer from the Dodgers the year before. He was not tied to any draft pick compensation for the Sox, so that's great. You're getting an elite offensive catcher, good framing. Overall, I think this is an upgrade over what they had in James McCann, and James McCann will be one of the best backups in the league and can even mix in a day or two a designated hitter in the American League.
Exactly.
Next up, we have Cincinnati, another former Brewer on the list. We got Mike Moustakas to the Reds for 4 years, $64 million. Going to move over to second base.
I also like this deal for the Reds. I think that Moustakas is a proven third baseman / second baseman for this team that's going to come in. He's a champion, of course, with the Royals. And I think he's just been a consistent 30 home run to 40 home run hitter the last couple of years here. So I think that was a great signing for the Reds to really bolster their lineup, especially coming with Suarez as well.
Great signing for Moustakas personally, having been spurred by the free agent market the last couple of years, having to re-up in Kansas City and then re-up again in Milwaukee because nobody wanted to give him the years and money he was looking for, and he finally got it in Cincinnati, going to a hitter's ballpark, young team. Their up-and-coming team, good starting pitching. This might be a move that puts Cincinnati over the edge and into the postseason in the National League Central. Next up, we have our first big fish of the market. Anthony Rendon to the Angels to be another one of Mike Trout's sidekicks. This 7 years, $245 million for the Rice University product.
I'm going to say this is the signing of the offseason. I think bringing Mike Trout some help is one of the biggest things that the Angels had to do this offseason. I think they've done it so far, bringing him in. And I think since they just won for the Nationals here, the best player, honestly, I think before even Harper left, I think he was still the better player of the two, especially with his averages because, Bryce Harper's a consistent 215 type player. And I just think that was a big pickup for him.
And the other thing with Rendon is that you're getting a very elite bat. He's been 1,000. I think he had a OPS over 1,000 last year, which is once you're getting into that kind of territory, you're talking franchise type players. And even if Rendon doesn't have the personality of a Bryce Harper, he's still arguably a very, very, very good player. And you're just adding more with more bats around Trout. You got Ohtani there. He had a good season last year. You add Rendon into the mix, and you get a little bit of protection for Trout, so you don't have just Trout and a bunch of average major leaguers. So this was an important signing for the Angels, in my opinion. This might put them into the playoffs depending on what they get out of their pitching, but we'll see.
Yeah, I thought last year they were good enough to make the playoffs, but I was wrong there. But I think this signing definitely gives them a little added boost.
Next up on the free agent tender, we have Sir Didi Gregorius to the Philadelphia Phillies on a one-year deal worth $14 million to reunite with Joe Girardi. I'm going to go out and say that this is a good signing for Philadelphia just because it gives them a left-handed bat, hitter's ballpark. Gregorius gets along well with Girardi, veteran manager in that ball club, which is what I think they were missing last year. They had all those big, sexy additions last year. Now they got a veteran manager to right that ship.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a very low-risk deal. I think only having that 1 year, if it flops, then it's not that huge of a deal. He's just gone the next season. The fact that he's only 29, he's had some pretty decent seasons with the Diamondbacks, for example, and the Yankees. I think he has a very good, powerful bat, kind of in a way, the last couple of years here. They started off kind of rough for him, but he really picked it up coming the last 3 years here. He's always been a very good hitter. He's always had a 250-plus average as well. So I think this team definitely needed a good bat as their shortstop.
Next signing, we got longtime Blue Jays fan favorite Edwin Encarnacion to the Chicago White Sox on another 1-year deal worth $12 million. I'm gonna say that I'm personally not a huge fan of this signing for the Sox, just because I felt like they could have maybe filled another need here. You let go of Yolmer Sanchez. That's Gold Glove defense. You're letting go there, and I thought an infielder that could have played second, third base might have been a more positive addition for them rather than adding Encarnacion, who's a first baseman / designated hitter.
Mm-hmm.
You already have Jose Abreu, and you're getting a similar player, maybe a little bit even below Abreu with this signing for Encarnacion.
I'm kind of on the fence about it too. I think they should have targeted Donaldson instead, personally. I just think that having that third baseman would have been better than having the first baseman, like you said. But honestly, Edwin always finds a way to play well for teams like this. Like he went to Seattle, played well there, went to the Yankees, played well there before he got hurt. And I just think that everywhere he goes, he's just going to continuously hit 30 home runs. And I think that's one thing that the White Sox have had problems with in the past is getting runs. And I think Edwin's going to help them do that for sure.
Next up on the free agent tender, we got the big sexy addition of Garrett Cole to his childhood favorite team, the New York Yankees, on a record-breaking deal of 9 years, $324 million, with an option for a 10th year on that deal to avoid the opt-out in the contract. I'm going to say that this is the addition the Yankees needed to make them World Series favorites after they ran into the Astros in the American League Championship Series last year. It was obvious their starting pitching wasn't good enough to get them to where they needed to be. I didn't think they were going to, even though like James Paxton, Masahiro Tanaka are solid Major League starting pitchers, they're not that true number one you need come October baseball. And you're adding a guy who struck out 326 batters last year. Like, I don't think any team would say no to that. So huge. This is a super like for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not much you can say that's bad about this deal. I mean, obviously it's a 9-year contract, so if it doesn't work out, then obviously that's going to be an issue. But I don't think it won't work out. Garrett Cole's been one of the best pitchers in the league. He was very underrated in Pittsburgh before he came to the Houston Astros. And I think just when he got there, he and Verlander really picked up their game. And I think the fact that he got to learn from somebody like Verlander is going to really help him going into the future. And I can see him winning at least 2 Cy Youngs with the Yankees.
So we're going back to the south side with Dallas Keuchel to the Sox, 3-year deal, $55 million for the veteran left-hander, former Cy Young Award winner. And I'm going to say this is a swipe right for me just because Keuchel, proven ground ball guy, lots of pitchers' ballparks in that division in the American League Central with Kauffman Stadium and Comerica Park. He'll be playing a lot of games in. If you're the Sox, want a guy that could keep it on the ground, give you 200 innings a season, let some of those younger arms maybe develop with – you got Michael Kopech coming back off Tommy John. You'll want to give him a break. You'll want to use the bullpen more those days that you got Kopech going, so you need a guy that can give you 6-7 innings a day, and that's exactly what Dallas Keuchel is going to give the Sox, even if he didn't have the year everyone expected of him in Atlanta last year after coming back midseason. So this is a swipe right for me.
I also like this deal. I think Keuchel kind of won his Cy Young and then started getting overshadowed by the Astros making trades for better pitching. I think Verlander came in and kind of deteriorated his confidence a little bit from being that number one and falling down a lot. And I think it's a good deal, him going back to being the number one pitcher, having Golito as the second one, and just being able to have that kind of confidence in himself again. He has this new deal. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of confidence not being signed halfway through the season last year either. And just the fact that going to a team that was so starter heavy, he also had problems getting starts as well. I think that him being back with his 1 or 2 starting role, I think that's very good for him.
Next signing is the big one north of the border in Toronto, Hyunjin Ryu, 4-year deal worth $80 million. I'm going to go out on the fence here saying I wasn't a huge fan of this signing for Toronto when I first heard about it. It'll have to grow on me just because he's 32, 33 years old, 4-year contract, big money. He was playing in the National League West last year. It's a huge transition from the National League where you have the pitcher spot in the order every day to go into the American League East where you have some of the most feared lineups in baseball. And it'll take some convincing of me to say that this is a good signing for Toronto, but that's just my personal opinion on it.
So, as a Blue Jays fan, I like the idea of the contract, and I like the idea of them going out and getting free agents and spending money, something they haven't done in the past. For example, Edwin Encarnacion when he left, and Jose Bautista having to leave at some point, and just the fact that they haven't been willing to give out big money in the past, the fact that they were able to spend that kind of money on Ryu. The only thing that scares me about this contract is Ryu has been getting injured every single year his last couple of years here. He just can't stay off the IR. So that scares me in the sense that maybe he'll get hurt again. But other than that, he had the best ERA in baseball for most of the season last year. And honestly, he could have won it if DeGrom didn't decide to go crazy the last 2 months.
Steven Strasburg re-ups in Washington, 7 years, $245 million, same carbon copy of the contract the Angels gave to Rendon. And I'm not, for Washington personally, they're a team built on starting pitching, but I'm just not a huge fan of this. I think they gave the money to the wrong guy here. I think Rendon is more valuable to your team being in the lineup every single day and play 140-plus games a season for you, rather than Steven Strasburg, who will make 30 starts for you a season. Even though he was tremendous in the postseason and he was a huge part of them getting that ring, winning 2 games in the World Series and having a especially great Game 6 that comes to memory. I just think the money was given to the wrong guy here by the Nationals front office, and I hope that Strasburg can prove me wrong, but I'm just not a huge fan of this for Washington.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Rendon would have been the player that I would have picked just because they have had strong pitching in the last couple of years here. I think that Rendon was the better player, and the fact that they lost Harper and Rendon in back-to-back years definitely hurts them. But with the Nationals, I do think that they overcame the odds before. Why couldn't they do it again? They still have Soto, who's going to be impressive. Turner, I think, is going to have a better year this year. And I just think it's going to be an all-around good team still come next year because the next man up is something that they really strive for.
Zach Wheeler to the Phillies, 5 years, $118 million. Massive contract for Wheeler, and I think a fairly reasonable term for the Phillies. I'm going to say I'm a fan of this for Philadelphia. With all the additions they made last offseason with Gene Segura, Bryce Harper, the list goes on and on. I think the one area they neglected was the starting rotation, and that showed when they got into that ultra-competitive National League East when you faced some of that other starting pitching in that division. The Nationals' three-headed monster of Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, the Mets with DeGrom, Syndergaard, Matz, those guys. They needed to catch up to the rest of the division in the starting rotation, and they accomplished it with this signing.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about this deal. Obviously, I do like Zach Wheeler. He was definitely overshadowed in New York with DeGrom and Syndergaard both being there. I think he was a very good third option for him, and I definitely think that he was a very good pitcher for the last couple of years here. I just have the question of, do you think he's ready to be the number 1 or number 2, or do you think he's still the third fiddle?
Next up, one of my personal favorite players in Major League Baseball, Madison Bumgarner, to the Arizona Diamondbacks on a deal worth 5 years, $85 million. Now, for a guy who'll give you 200 innings a season, last year a bit of a down season by Bumgarner standards, ERA at about 3.9, still through 207 innings for San Francisco. I think this is a steal, a bargain for Arizona. A player of his caliber should be getting Wheeler-type money in that $120 million plus range, and then you get him for 85. You add more to that rotation that's lost a little bit in the last couple of years with Corbin heading to Washington, and the future of Robbie Ray past this next season is a little bit of a question mark. So you have someone who will be in that rotation for the next few years. Also pretty damn good at the plate there in the National League. He'll even pinch hit a little bit for Bruce Bochy in the Bay. So huge fan of Madison Bumgarner to the Arizona Diamondbacks.
The one concern that I have is something didn't quite look right for Bumgarner last year, and it made me think maybe he might be on the decline. Obviously, he might prove me wrong, but I think that Bumgarner's best days are definitely behind him. I think he can still be a solid pitcher, but I don't think he should be your starting ace anymore. I think he might go down to the third or the fourth or the second option. But I think after last year, I'm not completely sold on Bumgarner continuing to be an ace anymore.
Now let's look over to the relief pitching market. Will Harris to Washington on a 3-year deal worth $24 million. This is probably the most recent one I think I have on the list, but personally, Washington, bullpen ERA over 5 last year. You had A.J. Hinch's most reliable reliever from the postseason last year. 3-year deal. What can I say? This is gonna look very good come July for the Nationals, as they needed. As without the offense they had last year, losing Rendon, you'll need better pitching, and this addresses that need.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. He was very good last year until the playoffs came, and then he kind of choked a little bit. But, he's lost 2 games, had a 4.08 ERA in the playoffs, but, he only had 2 relief appearances in there. But definitely a good player, good fly ball pitcher, and he's going to definitely get the job done.
Back another reliever. High-profile reliever, Will Smith to the Atlanta Braves, 3 years, $39 million after a year in San Francisco last year. I think this is a good signing for the Braves. Bullpen was a question mark for them last year. They did go out and make some moves to address it at the deadline last year, adding Shane Green from the Tigers and Mark Melancon from San Francisco. But my only concern is with the amount of money given out, as you're already paying a lot of money to Mark Melancon, as that contract has looked to be a mistake after he signed it in San Francisco. I believe he's on the last year of that deal, though, so you have a positive with that at least. But all that money tied up that you're tying up to Will Smith, and you're tying up to Melancon. Sorry, English is hard. I'm just concerned that in the near future, you'll have money you have to give out to guys, and if you're tying up that much money in your bullpen.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing with the bullpen is, how much money do you truly want to spend on pitchers that are only going to play 1 or 2 innings? For example, signing someone like Betances, for example, who's only going to come in for a year or 2. He's our next person to talk about, by the way. I don't like paying relief pitchers so much money. I think that's one of the reasons why Kimbrel was not signed halfway through the year, because he wanted so much money, and people said, why sign this guy? He wants so much money, and we can get so many cheaper options who will probably do somewhat of the same thing that he will. I do like Will Smith. I just think that he needs to kind of be more consistent. Some years he'll be over 3 on his ERA, some years he'll be over 2 on his ERA. You just got to be more consistent. Maybe get down to that 1 market this year, like some of the other pitchers in this free agent pool, like Will Harris, for example. I just think he'll do a lot better job. He doesn't allow a whole lot of home runs, so it'll be a lot better for him.
So about our next player, Dellin Betances has taken the subway in New York. He'll be going from the Yankees to the Mets on a 1-year deal worth $10.5 million. Personally, I am not a huge fan of this contract for the Mets. Don't get me wrong, Betances is an elite reliever in Major League Baseball when he's healthy, but he's coming off a torn Achilles. He's thrown like 2/3 of an inning within the last 2 years because of injury. He came back and threw a game in Toronto last year, threw 2/3 of an inning, and then tore his Achilles when he was coming off a shoulder injury, I believe. So he's just been injured a lot lately, and paying almost $11 million to someone who's been injured a lot just doesn't sit right with me. If this deal was in the $4 or $5 million range, I'd be all for it for New York. But personally, I'm going to swipe left on this signing of Dellin Betances.
For me, the Mets have done a interesting thing this summer in signing a lot of players to 1-year contracts. I think that they have really done a good job of trying to find those holes. But some players that they have signed, like Betances, for example, I don't think he will be as good as people think he'll be. He's coming off that injury that he just had. And I think that he's going to get you strikeouts, but hopefully he doesn't get the earned run average up there.
And we'll hopefully improve that bullpen if you get a bounce-back year from Edwin Diaz, who was, needless to say, a bit of a disaster his first season in New York. Last profile on the free agent tender, we got Jose Abreu re-upping in the south side of Chicago, 3 years, $50 million. Huge fan of this signing from me. Face of the franchise for the Sox. Loads of RBIs out of that bat. Hits off-speed pitches like no business. When he was in Cuba, nobody threw 95 that could blow it past him, so he had to learn how to hit those pitches, and now he feasts on them in Major League Baseball. Huge signing for the White Sox, getting him back. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I am too. I think he's been one of the best hitters in the last couple of years here. Obviously, he came into the league a little bit older, and a lot of people thought, oh, is this guy going to be able to develop the way that other players do? He came into the league and just took off in his rookie season, obviously hitting 36 home runs, having 107 RBIs. But he's been consistent with that. He's always going to be the guy who gets you 100 RBIs a year. Obviously, he had that year where he was hurt. He would have got 100 RBIs that season too. He's obviously going to be that guy who definitely is a power hitter, who hits the ball at a very good clip, and obviously his slugging percentage is also going to be very high for you. He's just one of the best hitters in the game. What can I say?
So that concludes this edition of MLB Free Agent Tender. So now we'll do our predictions for where other notable free agents who have yet to sign this offseason will end up. So first, we're going to talk about my prediction for Josh Donaldson in his heading into his age 34 season this year. Had a 900 OPS in Atlanta last year, 37 home runs, 94 RBIs. One of the best bats on the market. He is looking for term, though, which might scare a few teams away. He's looking for a 3-4 year term on this contract. And I predict that he'll get that contract just because of his past track record within the last 5 years with Toronto and Atlanta. And I think the team that'll pay him will be the Minnesota Twins. They made some smart signings with some veteran starters to give them innings with Rich Hill and Homer Bailey, trying to save a little bit of money, not going after elite starting pitchers to make a run at someone like a Donaldson. So I think he gets a 4-year deal in the ballpark of in that $95 to $105 million range.
So I know there's been a lot of reports out there that he's waiting for that $110 million contract. But I don't think he's going to get it personally. I do agree with you. He should go to the Twins. I think that team is in the up and up, and I think him believing in a team like that, just like he believed in the Braves last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to re-up in Atlanta, but I don't think they end up will because they have to sign their stars in the future, so there's no point in signing a guy like him. I really like Donaldson because he bet on himself last year, signed that 1-year deal, and he was really the same batter he was in Toronto. Just getting outshouted by players like Freddie Freeman and Acuna, obviously. And I just think that wherever he goes, I think he'll shine. And
one of the reasons I'm going to say he's not going to end up back in Atlanta is that you sign him to a 4-year deal and you're paying him all that money 2-3 years down the road. you have people coming up for arbitration.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to have to pay a Mike Soroka, Ronald Acuna. Shout out Mike Soroka, Calgary, Alberta native.
My friend's family friend.
So next prediction, the notable personality of Yasiel Puig. I'm saying he's going to end up in Miami, in Little Havana, just because Miami needs to get people in the seats in that stadium. New ownership group, bring in a high-name Cuban player right on the doorstep to Cuba in South Beach, and I just think this makes the most sense. Term and finance-wise, if I had to project that, I have not the slightest clue, but I've just got this inkling that Yasiel Puig is going to end up in Miami.
I do like the idea of Puig going to Miami. I think that they do need that kind of big personality. Even their manager is Derek Jeter. Like, he's not that huge personality that you really need. But Puig is definitely that personality I think they need there. Somebody who's going to pump up the crowd, somebody who's going to get butts in seats, which I think Miami definitely needs right now, especially since, their whole redesign that they made that
they're like second in the last 8 years.
Yeah. And, they just going to continue to try and bring in these personalities. And there's another person on this list who I think would be a good player for them, just because of the loss of Castro. So let's see where this goes.
Next player on the list is Marcelo Zuna, coming off a bit of a down year in St. Louis last year. And I'm going to say he's going to end up in Texas. Why I say he's going to end up in Texas is they're opening up a new ballpark. There were rumors earlier in the offseason they were going to end up with Anthony Rendon, who was a Texas native. They were going to bring him home. That never happened. And if the front office still has that mood to spend money, Marcelo Zuna would be a good person to spend that money on. Had a solid season last year in St. Louis only had an 800 OPS in St. Louis last year, but he did hit 29 home runs, 89 RBIs, stole a small handful of bags. Texas needs some bats, so I'm saying he's going to end up in Texas in that brand new ballpark.
It seems like everybody's been connected with Texas lately. Arenado is supposed to go. Castellanos is also projected to go there as well. And, this Texas is trying to re-up their lineup. I understand why they are going for everybody. And I definitely think that this lineup needs more hitters for sure. I think that they had potential last season. They started off pretty hot and then ended up just kind of falling. But I think they do need to address starting pitching just a little bit more before they decide to re-up their whole entire lineup. And without that starting rotation, I don't think they'll be able to compete as fast as they think they will be able to.
Well, they have addressed the starting pitching with the Corey Kluber trade, which we'll talk about later, and as well as a couple free agent signings. Mm-hmm. The next name on the list is Nick Castellanos, the Greek god of doubles, as I like to call him, as he hit a metric ton of them in Chicago and Detroit last year. And me personally, as a Chicago Cubs fan, I want him to end up back in Chicago. He was one of the best bats on that team in the second half of the season last year. And if there's uncertainty in Chicago, do you move a Bryant? Do you move a Contreras? You'll want to have another solid bat there, so you can move a Bryant or a Contreras for some elite level pitching, which Chicago needs, because John Lester isn't the ace he used to be anymore. Mm-hmm. Cole Hamels departed for Atlanta. You need starting pitching on the north side of Chicago, and I think one step to that is to sign Nick Castellanos and maybe trade Bryant or Contreras.
I do like the idea of Castellanos going to the Texas Rangers. I think that they do need that guy who's going to get on base for you and do stuff like that. They used to have that with Kingsler, and now they can bring in a player like Castellanos and be able to get that on-bat or the on-base percentage so that their younger players can hit those RBIs and get those RBIs going. And just because, again, another team that struggled to get runs last year.
So we have two names left, and I'm just going to knock them out both at once. We got Scooter Gennett coming off a down and injured season last year with Cincinnati and San Francisco. Where he'll end up, I'm just trying to think of teams that need middle infield help. He could end up in.
This is the person I was talking about earlier who I think would fit well with the Marlins. They just lost Castro. Bring him in. Don't have to pay him that much since he did have that off year with injuries and everything like that. Give him a 1-year deal and start him. Let him go.
1 year. I'm going to go with you on that one with Jeanette, actually. I think 1 year prove-it deal with the Marlins. If he's having a torrid season, he'll be gone at the deadline. Mm-hmm. Get some young assets in Miami. And Brian Dozier, who was supposed to be the second baseman last year in Washington, ended up in a bench role in the postseason because of the emergence of Howie Kendrick. Dozier's another tough one to fit because I'm not the most keen on middle infield needs in Major League Baseball right now, but he could be another candidate for Miami, or he might sit on the market for a while. Cause
he could be another candidate for the Rangers, apparently, because everyone's going to the Rangers. Where would he go? I'm trying to think what would be a good team for him. He'd be okay in Seattle.
Seattle fill a need. 1-2 year deal. Mm-hmm. Help a young rebuilding team. Even the team that comes to mind now that I think about that is Oakland.
I was thinking that too.
Moneyball type signing for Billy Beane out there. Just traded Jurickson Profar earlier in the offseason to the Padres, replace him at second base. And if you even get a shade of what Brian Dozier was in 2016, 2017 in Minnesota, you have an elite second baseman back. And
put him alongside Simeon, who I do think is going to have another good year. Everyone's saying he's going to have a down year, but I think it's not a fluke.
Exactly. So there have been a little bit of trades on the hot stove this offseason, and we'll tackle them in the order of just no particular order, actually, just the ones that came to mind as I was writing the script for today. Corey Kluber ended up on the Texas Rangers in exchange for outfielder Delino DeShields Jr. and right-handed pitcher Emmanuel Clase. Not a fan of this trade for Texas. Got a bag of beans in exchange for a multiple-time Cy Young Award winner. Just if you're Cleveland, I think you could have got a lot more from other teams looking for starting pitching. And if you kept Kluber, you do still have Clevenger in that rotation, Shane Bieber in that rotation. You could have had another chance to make a run at the postseason in that weak AL Central Division. And trading Kluber looks like the start of a fire sale to me. Mm-hmm. Personally, it may happen later in the offseason if they move a Lindor or someone of that caliber. But I just think this move signals the beginning of the end for the Cleveland Indians.
This trade, I think the Indians panicked here. I think that they panicked. They thought we have to hit the reset button. Let's trade people as fast as possible. And they saw the first trade that came to them from Texas, and they went, okay, let's do it.
It looked to me like you're the general manager playing franchise mode in MLB The Show, and you put Corey Kluber on the trade finder, and you click the first button you find. That's what it looks like to me with the Corey Kluber trade to the Texas Rangers. We've been talking about the White Sox a lot. White Sox have been very active this offseason, acquiring Nomar Mazara from Texas, who we've also talked about a lot. So Nomar Mazara to the White Sox for outfield prospect Steele Walker. Walker played in high A ball last season in the White Sox organization. You're adding a major league outfielder with breakout potential in Nomar Mazara. Mm-hmm. So great move for the White Sox. As of right now, we'll see how this turns out a couple years down the road. Maybe Steele's a perennial all-star when he cracks the show, but right now I say the White Sox win this trade.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Mazara definitely has that potential for power for sure. Just the fact that they were able to get him on what I think is a pretty cheap deal is just a great move for the White Sox, and I think this year he could hit potentially 30, 35 home runs.
The LA Angels did make a trade. They got Dylan Bundy from the Baltimore Orioles for a package of 4 pitching prospects, none of whom seem notable. But you can take the pitcher out of Baltimore, but can you take the Baltimore out of the pitcher? Right. That's the question for me with the Dylan Bundy trade, is that he was electric when he made his major league debut at 19, 20 years old. He was hyped to be a future of a franchise, Roy Halladay type of starter, and he wasn't that in Baltimore due to injuries. The team around him wasn't very strong also, but let's hope for his sake. I'd love to see a guy like Dylan Bundy succeed on a Joe Madden-led ball club in Anaheim. So I'm going to say I'm a fan of this trade for Dylan Bundy.
I personally, as a Blue Jays fan, I've never liked Dylan Bundy. I just feel like he's such an inconsistent pitcher. I just think like 1 week he can be spectacular and almost have a no-hitter through 7 innings, and the next game he's 10 runs in 2 innings, then he's out of the game already. I just think that the Angels needed to do their starting. I'd like the risk of this, but I just think they need to bring in another pitcher to help as well. I just think
a more established veteran.
Yeah, just a player like Bumgarner would have been great for them, for example. I just think that Bundy isn't ready for the spotlight quite yet.
So this was the first one that happened in the offseason, and I think it's going to be a very, 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 very good trade if Luis Urias can hit like he did in the minor leagues in the show. The trade is left-handed pitcher Eric Lauer and shortstop Luis Urias to Milwaukee in exchange for outfielder Trent Grisham and Zach Davies, and right-handed pitcher Zach Davies being sent to the Padres. I hope Grisham's career doesn't turn out to be his most famous moment being in right field at Nationals Park.
Yeah.
But he can rake also, and in my opinion, like Lauer's younger than Davies. He could have some more upside from Davies because we've had breakout candidates in baseball in the past that are very unlikely. One notable one is at one point in time, people thought Jacob deGrom would never be better than Matt Harvey.
Yeah.
Look what's happened now. If something like that happens with Eric Lauer, you're talking about a steal of a trade here. And I think Luis Urias will be the solution after Orlando Arcia, if Orlando Arcia can't pick up the bat there in Milwaukee, to go along with Keston Hiura. That's a potent middle infield offensively with Urias and Keston Hiura. So winner of this trade for me is the Milwaukee Brewers.
I do agree that the Milwaukee Brewers do win this trade, but I do want to talk about Zach Davies a little bit. I do like him as a starting pitcher. I think that he's done a very good job of maintaining home runs throughout his whole career. The highest he's allowed in a whole entire season is 70, which I think is pretty good for a starting pitcher. He's also very good. He's a consistent 150 to 200 inning pitcher. He's still 26. He's still pretty young, and I think that he can only get better as his career go on. And the chance to be the number 1 starter or number 2 starter or number 3 starter with the Padres, I think is really going to help him rejuvenate his career. I think he was ready for a new destination.
I think my opinion of Zach Davies and how I've kind of viewed him over the years is I've kind of viewed him as like diet Kyle Hendricks in a way, because he's got similar stuff. He's got very similar stuff to Kyle Hendricks. Doesn't quite have the wipeout changeup that Kyle Hendricks has on the Cubs, and Hendricks puts up better numbers than Davies has, and that's been Milwaukee's problem for a while, has been the starting pitching. And let's hope if they add more offense. I still think Milwaukee needs starting pitching to be competitive in that National League Central. With the Reds are getting better, the Cardinals are getting better, the Cubs are getting better. I just think they need they'll need starting pitching in that division and whatnot. So
I'm just gonna correct myself real quick. I looked at the wrong thing. He's allowed 70 home runs. So 20 is his highest, which is very good.
So we'll talk about Milwaukee again here. They got Omar Narvaez from the Seattle Mariners in exchange for a competitive balance draft pick and right-handed pitching prospect Adam Hill.
Not Aaron Hill, for anybody who's getting it mixed up.
Milwaukee needed to replace the offensive production they lost when Grandal headed to the south side. I think this is a good move for Milwaukee if they want to remain competitive in this division. Adam Hill, I believe, is fairly well regarded among scouts, which is why he was given up in this trade. But Narvaez, the only problem with Narvaez for me is that he's not Yasmani Grandal behind the plate. Like, Grandal's an elite offensive and defensive catcher, and Narvaez is arguably the best hitting catcher in Major League Baseball, but he's almost a liability behind the plate.
Yeah.
You do have Manny Pena, though, so you can have a defensive-minded backup catcher. I still think, I think this is just kind of a put a Band-Aid on it type solution. This isn't a long-term answer. For Milwaukee. They just kind of panicked that they didn't get Grandal back, so they just got Diet Yasmani Grandal in Omar Narvaez.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a risky move. If it does pay off, good for the Brewers for finding somebody that they wanted to bring in for their future. I just think that Narvaez is very how do I say this? Like, why can't I think of this word right now? He's had one good season. That's it. Like, he hasn't been spectacular his whole entire career. He played 4 years. Obviously, he had that outburst in Seattle, but everybody had that outburst in Seattle in the beginning of that year. I just think that this might not be the full solution.
So we'll have a little bit of open debate for a little while here, and if we still have time at the end, we'll do our way too early MLB season predictions.
Yeah, we got time.
Who will be moved first, Francisco Lindor or Mookie Betts?
I don't know why you would move any of them. Why would you trade them? Like, I know you want to rebuild and everything. You can get some prospects at it, but both players are still pretty young. You can still build around them, have those other prospects, especially Mookie Betts. I would just keep him in Boston. The way that this team can change over and flip their team around and become better. You signed him for that long contract a couple years ago, I think.
No, he'll be a free agent after this season.
Okay, so like 5 years ago, then they signed that. Then it's been a while. And yeah, just the fact that you don't think you can be able to re-sign him, I get that part of it, but I just don't think they should trade either of them.
My opinion is, I think, as unlikely as it sounds, I think Lindor is heading to LA.
Don't want that to happen.
Because he has 2 years of control left, 2020 and 2021. He can be an elite player on the Dodgers to get someone to help them put them over that hump. Justin Turner's contract is expiring. Many scouts see Corey Seager as a third baseman long term. You include a package that does not include Corey Seager. He takes over at third base once Justin Turner's contract expires. I believe it's after the 2020 season. And then you have your infield. You'll have like Max Muncy, Francisco Lindor, Corey Seager. It will cost a lot though
To get him, yeah.
You're probably looking at two of the three prospects I'm about to list: Keibert Ruiz, Dustin May, and Gavin Lux. LA is very reluctant to part with Gavin Lux, but he might be the cherry on top that gets this deal made. And Mookie Betts, I don't think will be moved in the offseason. I think if the ship is sinking in Boston come July 31st, he'll be gone to a team that will use Mookie Betts more. But Boston is a bounce back candidate with Chris Sale having an awful year by Chris Sale standards in Boston.
And Devers and Bogarts and
Boston's a bounce back candidate. That's all I can say. So
another thing I think why they shouldn't trade Lindor personally in Cleveland is they could also be a bounce back candidate in my opinion, even though they didn't really falter that much. They just barely missed the playoffs. Ramirez, I think, is going to have a bounce back year. He had a very bad season last year. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. So that's just a power there. They still have a decent starting pitching rotation, and I just think that this team can still do things. And why trade your star player right now? Maybe next year, 2 years from now when he isn't expiring, then you can look into it. But I don't think there's a rush to trade him.
I'm still going to say Lindor is going to be moved.
If anyone's getting moved, I think it's Lindor too, but I just don't think it should.
Just because I have seen rumors out of Cleveland that the Angels are gawking at Clevenger, and if that deal And like I said, I thought the Kluber deal was the beginning of the end for the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah.
And if the Clevenger deal's made, the Lindor deal's made. Simple as that. You don't leave a star player like Francisco Lindor on a team with nothing around him. So how about our next debate topic? We'll skip over the White Sox. For now. What should the punishment be for the Red Sox and Astros' alleged sign stealing during the 2017 and 2018 postseason?
I think that they should take away some draft picks from each team. I don't know how many, personally. Maybe 1 or 2 first-round picks in the next couple of years here. I think that baseball needs to really crack down on it. And I think taking away draft picks from a team, especially if they both decide, or like the Red Sox do decide to rebuild, taking away draft picks from them will be huge for them. So I think that would be the best way to do it.
I think what's going to happen is I think you're probably looking at losing a first round pick for the next couple of years, as well as significantly slashed international bonus money, because international bonus money allows a team to get a superstar player for a bargain price. Look at some of the players that have been signed on the international market that are making impacts now, like Juan Soto comes to mind. He was an international bonus player. The guy's 20, 21 years old, and the best player on his team. By far, he is the Greek god of walks in Major League Baseball right now. It's Juan Soto. So, yeah, you're looking at loss of draft picks, international bonus money. I don't think you take away a championship. You don't take away a championship from a team. Sorry, LA, you're not getting a compensation championship 2 years after the fact. But yeah, bare minimum draft picks, international pool money, and maybe a fine to the owners of the ball club.
I would definitely fine the owner. I just thought that was a given, so I didn't say it.
So last debate topic here. Are the White Sox a legit threat in the American League Central?
Yes. I think they still need one last starting pitching player. But other than that, I think they will be a threat. I don't think they'll beat out the Twins for the whole entire division. But I do think that this team is on the up and up for sure. And I think Moncada is going to have a breakout year this year.
I'm gonna in my 2020 predictions, I have the White Sox actually winning the Central over the Twins. I'll get into my reasoning later, but Giolito's shown he can be a number one guy. He was a well-regarded prospect in the Nationals organization and an absolute fleece trade of the decade.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is Adam Eaton for Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez. Those could be 2 key players in that Sox rotation. Like, Reynaldo Lopez has amazing stuff. He just needs – he's a breakout candidate for me. You've got a proven veteran in Dallas Keuchel, another young, exciting player in Michael Kopech. So it'll be a starting pitching on the younger end, but I still think it'll be a very good starting rotation. And in that bullpen can be better than it was. You get a bounce back season from like Kelvin Herrera, for example, who's been historically very good, but had a quite bloated ERA last year. They added Steve Cishek from the Cubs yesterday or earlier today. He's going to be very good in that bullpen to get to Alex Colomé, as well as Jace Fry, Aaron Bummer, 2 quality left-handed relievers, I think, as well as that you got the batting champion in Tim Anderson.
Yeah.
Yoan Moncada's only going to go up from here, I think. Abreu, Encarnacion, Luis Robert signed that 6-year contract. He'll start the year on the big league roster. I think he would beat out an Adam Engel.
I think so too.
And
Engel was very disappointing last year.
So I'm going to say Chicago White Sox 2020 American League Central champions.
We didn't even talk about the Athletics in that either. The Athletics might be pretty good too. Oh, never mind. That's the West.
Yeah, divisions are hard.
That's awkward.
So we're going to do our way too early MLB season predictions.
Okay.
I'll start. I'll just rattle off my American League East. The American League East champions, I think, will be the New York Yankees. Garrett Cole makes that an elite ball club in my opinion. to go along with complementary pieces such as James Paxton, Masahiro Tanaka, Luis Severino. That's a very good rotation. Number 2, the Tampa Bay Rays. You can't count those guys out. If Tampa Bay had the payroll of the New York Yankees, they could go 162-0.
Yeah,
that's how good the front office has been. They signed Satsugo out of Japan. He could be a very underrated bat. 3rd place, I have Boston. I don't think Boston has done enough as of right now to overpass the Yankees or the Rays. 4th place is Toronto. As much as Toronto's improved, getting underrated signing, in my opinion, in Travis Shaw, Hyunjin Ryu in that starting rotation. I just think this division is merciless, and I don't see anywhere for the Jays. I don't see one of these teams that Toronto can hop. I hope they surprise me, but I have Toronto in 4th. And in last place, Baltimore, going to be there for about 5 years.
Means will be a very good pitcher, though. I think, again. For me, it's the Yankees. I don't know. You kind of already went over it. I think the Yankees are the best team. I think the Rays, trading Tommy Pham might have been a huge mistake for them, I think. But I think this team can still kind of get back to where they were last year. And then I think the Blue Jays are going to surpass the Red Sox this year if, they, for example, trade Mookie Betts. I think that this team has a lot of players that can blow up. They got Gurriel. They got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Biggio. They got Bichette. And even Ryu could explode.
And, there have been some players that have gotten Major League time that I don't think have reached their potential yet. In Toronto, maybe a Teoscar.
Teoscar came in halfway through last season and was unreal for the team. I think he hit 20 home runs in that span. And I think that this team can only go up from here. Even a Danny Jansen can go up from here as well. I think this team has the upside, and I think they will overtake the Red Sox.
The only question mark for me in Toronto is Rowdy Tellez your answer at first base. As of right now, I don't think so. I think you might have to look at the market, see who's out there, if you can get a trade for someone done, or you
just play Travis Shaw.
That's probably where he'll end up.
Yeah.
Never mind then. American League Central. As I've said earlier, 2020 AL Central champions. In my opinion, the Chicago White Sox. I think that rotation, that bullpen, with that young lineup, is going to go up and quickly to justify that rebuild they had about 3 or 4 years ago, trading Chris Sale to Boston. That'll make it a moot point when they win the division this year. I'm going Minnesota, 2nd place. Similar team to last year, added a couple of veteran starters in Homer Bailey, Rich Hill, held on to Michael Pineda and Jake Odorizzi.
Might pick up Donaldson here.
If our predictions are correct. Third place Cleveland Indians. I don't see them overpassing the top 2, but I think they're a superior ball club to the 4th and 5th place Kansas City Royals and Detroit Tigers. Only thing I can really talk about those 2 teams is what's going to happen with Whit Merrifield.
They're going to trade him. Instead of Lindor, because I don't think Cleveland will end up trading Lindor, I think Merrifield's going to go to the Dodgers.
I could see that, but as a Cubs fan, I want him on the north side. I'm sorry, I'm biased. I've been to Wrigley Field twice in my life, in 2014 and 2019. I love that field. I love the Cubs. I hope they get Whit Merrifield. Onto the Wild West. I got Houston winning the division. I don't think there's been enough done by other teams in the division to surpass them. So I think Houston has a fairly comfortable. Even without Garrett Cole, you still have Zach Greinke and Justin Verlander in place, which is a good first 2 starting pitchers.
I think McCullers will be.
McCullers is coming back off TJ. Oakland I have as the 3rd place team. But Oakland again is one of those teams you can never write off. They were 2nd place in the division.
They have so many players that surprise everybody. Simeon, Chapman,
Liam Hendricks.
Yeah.
had a breakout season. Even they were even able to counter a bad season last year from Blake Trinan.
Yeah.
By having a breakout season from Liam Hendriks. So it'll just be, I have just Oakland in third place in that division, but that could be an easy.
I just think their pitching is what their biggest issue. Their starting pitching is their biggest issue.
They have Sean Manaea coming back for a full season.
Just that, yeah. That's pretty much their whole rotation, though. Fires is all right, but
yeah. Fourth place, I have the Texas Rangers. I don't see enough to that pitching. Even with Corey Kluber, he's just one guy. And the other moves with starting pitching, I don't think will have done enough for them to get over the other three teams in the division. And last place, Seattle. I don't see, unless Seattle hits like they did in April all season, I don't think they get higher than fifth place in the American League West, as they're in the beginning stages of a long rebuild.
Yeah, I definitely think that nobody's going to say the Astros aren't going to win the division unless something drastic happens, like their star players get hurt. I don't see the Angels overtaking them, but I do agree that I think the Angels will come in second and finally make the playoffs with Mike Trout and let him do his thing in the playoffs. But I don't think they're going to go very far personally. I think that this team will probably make it to, if anything, the second round. But it's a step in the right direction, which they need.
So, on to the National League, and probably the hardest division for me personally to predict was the National League East. There are 4 teams in that division that you could legitimately say could win that division.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying the Atlanta Braves win that division just because you have really good talent on that team offensively, and you have guys coming back. Ender Inciarte's coming back. I think he was one piece that they missed in the playoffs last year. I think if they have Ender Inciarte, they beat the Cardinals in the division series. And yeah, you got Calgary native Mike Soroka leading that rotation, along with Cole Hamels, Max Fried, Sean Newcomb. Young rotation, but I think it'll be very good. Second place, I have the New York Mets. I think the Mets underperformed last season, and
that pitching rotation's unbelievable.
And they should have been in the wild card game over Milwaukee, in my opinion. Milwaukee played unbelievably well after the Yelich injury, and I just think that the Mets are finally gonna not be the New York Mets and come in second place in the National League East and be the number 1 wild card.
Be the team they were that made the World Series.
I don't know if they could make the World Series with that pitching staff easily and have another Washington Nationals type story. Third place, Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia, that starting pitching addition of Wheeler will be really nice, and you get some better years out of guys on that team. I think that doesn't push them past the Braves or the Mets, but I think they'll be a solid third-place team in that division. And I think my most controversial pick here is picking the Washington Nationals to be the fourth-place team in that division, because my reasoning behind it is I don't know if their offense will be what it was a year ago without Anthony Rendon. You still have Juan Soto, and he'll be an elite player, don't get me wrong. But will Howie Kendrick be the World Series, the NLCS MVP again, and perform as well as he did last year? I think he hit like 344 last year, which is insane. But can he do it again? I think it's going to be a down year for Howie Kendrick. Ryan Zimmerman, who I don't think has officially signed but will be back there, I don't think he'll have a tremendous season, and there's just too many question marks for me on Washington, especially losing a cornerstones of your offense back-to-back years, and Harper and Rendon that's going to catch up with them. And last place, Marlins.
So I have the Phillies first. Personally, I think McCutcheon's going to come back and have a great year. I think only thing that I think is Bryce Harper is going to have a bounce-back year. The fact that he still hit so many 30-plus home runs and we're calling it an off year, I think he can be able to bounce back and have a better year for the Phillies, get used to the environment, play a lot better, get used to the ballpark a little bit. And I just think the addition of Zach Wheeler is going to be huge for them, I think, as well. And I just think that this team just keeps adding players that I think can make an impact on this team. And then second, I have the Braves and the Mets. Just like you said, both teams very strong right now. I think that the Mets could easily pass the Braves if their three-headed monster pitching staff can take over the league. I think Stroman's going to have a very good season this year, and I think the other two are obviously going to be good. And I think this is the year that Syndergaard finally is one of the best pitchers in the league. And just talking about the Braves quickly, I just read an article that says they are the favorites for Donaldson at the current moment.
Will that hold true? We will see. This is still a lot of time between now and first day of spring training.
If the Braves get Donaldson, I'll move them back to the top of the division.
And your bottom two in that division?
Just the Nationals and Marlins for the same reason you said. I don't think that the Nationals can keep that magic going, and the Marlins just suck. But I do think Anderson's going to have a really good year.
They're just the Marlins.
Yeah.
So my NL Central standings may be a little bit biased, but I picked the Chicago Cubs to win the division just because I know Lester's not the ace he used to be, but if he can have a sub-4 ERA in Chicago, that would be great. You get Darvish pitching like he did in the second half. You have that offense. You have Bryant. You have Baez. You have Rizzo. Hayward's been doing better offensively lately. You have a 30-plus home run bat and Kyle Schwarber in left field. But is Albert Almora the answer in center field? Do you give him some more time there? And second base are like my only two question marks. Position-wise for the Cubs as well as the bullpen.
I think Chris Bryant will be gone by the mid-season point.
You think so?
Yeah.
Even though it depends on the grievance. If the grievance gives him free agency a year earlier, it could greatly impact his value and depend on if the Cubs will trade him or not. That's my opinion.
I personally think the Reds are going to take the top of the division. I think that this team has improved vastly in the last couple of years here. I think that Trevor will have a better year for them. I think that their hitters are going to continue to be good hitters. I think Moustakas will help them get over the top here. And I just think that you have a well-rounded team now that can definitely help lead them into where they want to go. And I think Joey Votto is going to have a bounce back here.
I'm not so sure about Votto having – Votto will still walk for you, but will he hit for a high average and hit a lot of home runs and hit for power? I'm in the opinion that he will not. As much as I like him being a Canadian guy and everything, I don't know what the future holds for Joey Votto in Cincinnati, who I have as my second place team in the division, as you said. Trevor Bauer, Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, very good starting rotation. The addition of Shogo Akiyama from Japan could prove to be a very good signing. Third place for me is St. Louis. St. Louis is another one of those teams you just can never count out, like the Rays and the Athletics. Yeah. No matter what the situation, it seems like they find magic pixie dust and are a competitive team in the postseason. Fourth place, Milwaukee Brewers. Even with the addition of Luis Urias, I don't think they'll take a step back from last year because of the loss of Grandal and Moustakas. And last place is the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're the Pittsburgh Pirates. They traded Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow for Chris Archer, and that's why they'll finish fifth place in 2020.
But Bell will be a very good player again. I just think that the Brewers will go as far as Christian Yelich will take them. I think if Yelich has another unreal season, I think they'll be in contention for the top two spots. But if Yelich doesn't come back the way he did after his injury, I don't see them going any higher than the Cubs. The NL West. Let's talk about the NL West.
It's not the wild, wild west of the American League West, but it's been very predictable the last few years. But I'm going to go with the LA Dodgers winning the division again. I don't think, even though I like the additions of like Bumgarner and everything, I don't know if anybody has done enough to surpass them in that regard. They still have Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. They're a good team even with losing Ryu. Second place, I put San Diego. I think San Diego is due to take a step forward. Fernando Tatis healthy for a full season. Manny Machado will bounce back. Improvements from guys like Eric Hosmer. Maybe you get a breakout. Finally get that breakout season from Manny Margot in center field.
And we say that he had a pretty good year last year, too. 30-plus homers.
And third place, I have Arizona. You do have one of the most underrated players in Major League Baseball, in my opinion, in Ketel Marte out there. Madison Bumgarner being added. Christian Walker had a good season last year. He'll be a cornerstone. Carson Kelly, another cornerstone out there. I just don't think they're a better team than the Dodgers at this moment, with how the Dodgers continually bring up guys from the farm system that are like superstars instantly. Fourth place, Colorado. I don't think their pitching's going to be very good. It's the same story every year when the Rockies are bad. It's the pitching. Their high-priced bullpen wasn't very good last year, even though they have guys such as Wade Davis and Brian Shaw out there. They lost Adam Ottavino, who was their best reliever. Last year, he went to the Yankees. So Colorado in fourth. And in fifth place, I'm going to go with San Francisco. Offense doesn't really impress me. Nobody out of their best hitter last year was Kevin Pillar when it came to power.
Yes,
and he's Kevin Pillar, and they non-tendered him.
I love Kevin Pillar.
So that should speak volumes about San Francisco when you're non-tender your best offensive player. And even though I know you have Johnny Cueto coming back from Tommy John, the loss of Bumgarner is so huge just because he's been the face of that franchise since
the first World Series win.
Since 2014, for the most part, for me, when he single-handedly slayed Kansas City, is when he became the face of the franchise. He's been the face of the franchise ever since. San Francisco finishes fifth.
I think that San Francisco will be better than the Rockies. I think the Rockies are going to trade Arenado before the trade deadline.
Where's Arenado going to?
See, that's the thing. You can't really know with third baseman. I can see Texas making a really good run for him. Just the issue with that is that how much is Texas trying to rebuild their roster to the point where they're going to trade a lot of their prospects to get Arenado?
I'm going to go out. I can go out on a limb here and say if Atlanta doesn't re-sign Donaldson, then a trade for Arenado could be in the works because Atlanta has the farm system to make it happen.
That's true. But the thing is, how much would they want for him? That's the question. Would they want like an Albies?
They would want a lot. I don't think they would give up an Albies. They have some very high-regarded prospects in the upper minors, and their GM is Alex Anthopoulos.
True.
You've seen some of the trades.
Fleeces.
You've seen some of the trades he's made, including the Josh Donaldson trade, the Troy Tulowitzki trade, and the David Price trade.
Man,
Enough said.
That Troy Tulowitzki trade just annoys me. But yeah, as much as I love the Rockies, I just think their bullpen is awful. Their stars are stars. It's just if you allow the other team to get a whole lot of runs every single game, that you're not going to win games, and I think their pitching staff won't be able to do it. John Gray might have a bounce back year, but I don't know.
I think the key for Colorado is going to be Kyle Freeland.
Yes.
If he can be 2018 Kyle Freeland,
which I think he will be,
he'll be amazing. But if he's AAA fodder 2019 Kyle Freeland, that's a problem for Colorado. I like Kyle Freeland. I want to see that guy succeed. But he's going to be the big question mark for Colorado for me. So I think that's pretty much everything we have for today for the first edition, the MLB offseason edition of the Screwball Podcast under the Prairie Puck Boys umbrella. So I've been Nathan Ryder, your host today, joined by Michael Cake.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. I will probably be posting this on Friday. Try to get it up on Friday. We have hockey today, basketball tomorrow, and then on Friday, baseball. So then we'll see where we go from there. And we actually consistently post it for a whole entire week.
Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.
See you guys later. Feel free to play a song.
I don't have one.
You don't have one? Okay, we can just have it. Or I can add some.